My beloved chosen ones, the venom they spat wasn't random, it was deliberate. They designed it to break you, but what they never expected is that you'd survive it and come back brighter. Now they're the ones choking on the poison they prepared for your downfall. They thought you'd fold, thought that if they pushed you hard enough, mentally, emotionally, even financially, they could trap you in a version of yourself that was easier to control, easier to silence, easier to discard, because they didn't want your strength. They wanted your submission. They didn't want your truth. They wanted your silence. Broken people are easier to manipulate. Quiet people don't challenge false authority. And dependent people, they don't walk away. That was the plan all along. Keep you in the dark while they fed off your light. Drain you until you forgot who you were. But what they didn't expect is you remembered. And not just that, you evolved. You didn't just keep your mind, you found your clarity. You didn't fall apart. You rose, stronger, sharper, unapologetically aware. Before we dive any deeper, I want to take a moment and thank every one of you who has supported this message through super thanks. Your generosity is not only deeply appreciated, it helps keep this mission going. If you've given, know this: you've sown into something that multiplies light. And if you haven't, but you're still here listening, thank you. Your energy, your attention, your presence is powerful. Donation is never required for honor. Now, if you're feeling this in your spirit already, drop 777 in the comments. That number is not random, it's alignment, completion, divine perfection. Every comment, every like, every share helps this message reach another chosen one who's on the verge of breaking free. The algorithm won't move until you do. So don't just feel this, amplify it. Let the world know you're reclaiming everything they tried to steal from you. Now that the veil is lifted, now that the illusions are crumbling, let's get into it. Because you didn't just survive the war, you became the storm they thought would swallow you. God's chosen ones, this is getting ugly. Everything they wished on you has become their reality. Chosen one, this was never just about envy. It was a campaign. They didn't simply wish for your downfall from afar. They schemed for it up close, smiled to your face, complimented your strength, all while slipping daggers into conversations behind closed doors. They planted rumors like weeds, hoping to choke out your name before it bloomed. You were too much for them, too radiant, too strong, too aligned. And so they did what the fearful always do to the favored. They tried to sabotage what they couldn't imitate. But now the very curses they whispered over your life are becoming their daily reality. Doesn't it make sense now why they needed you to fail? Because your existence mirrored everything they lacked. Your resilience highlighted their fragility. Your peace exposed their inner war. And even when you walked in silence, they felt threatened. Because chosen ones don't need to shout. Their presence speaks for itself. The more you rose, the more their masks slipped. But what they didn't realize was that in plotting your collapse, they triggered a divine reversal. The spiritual law is clear. Whoever digs a pit will fall into it. If someone rolls a stone, it will roll back on them. Proverbs 26:27. That stone they set in motion, it's rolling straight into their own house now. Look at history. Don't you see the pattern? Think of Nelson Mandela. They imprisoned him for 27 years, hoping to erase his voice. Instead, they amplified it. When he walked free, the tables turned, and the very system that tried to break him had to hand him the throne of leadership. Or look at Oprah Winfrey, rejected and fired early in her career. Her light was too big for the boxes they tried to put her in, but she didn't crumble. She built her own stage. And now, every limitation they tried to place on her has turned into fuel for her legacy. That's what's happening to you now, chosen one. Their betrayal was never the final chapter. It was the catalyst. Because what they didn't understand is this: you weren't just covered by favor, you were assigned by heaven. When they cursed you, they weren't just defying you, they were going to war with divine alignment. And what happens when someone declares war on the will of God? No weapon that is formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that shall rise against you in judgment you shall condemn. Isaiah 54:17. The chaos they once hoped would drown you, it's flooding their homes now. The sleepless nights they tried to send your way. They're pacing floors at midnight, haunted by the very lies they spread. That pit of anxiety they hoped you'd fall into, it's become the bed they can't climb out of. And yet here you are, still rising. Why do you think that is? Because you never fought back with venom. You didn't play dirty. You let God handle it. And that restraint, that's what made heaven move on your behalf. Remember the story of Tyler Perry, homeless, broke, laughed at. They said he'd never make it, but he stayed focused, stayed kind, stayed aligned. And now he's living in abundance, while many who mocked him are watching from the sidelines. That's divine justice, not always loud, but always final. But let's be honest, why do you still feel that twinge of guilt seeing them fall? Because you're different. You have empathy. You saw their humanity, even in their betrayal. You wished things could have gone another way. But compassion doesn't mean access. Just because you feel doesn't mean you have to return. That's not disloyalty to your spirit. It's loyalty to your growth. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever a man sows, that he will also reap. Galatians 6:7. Their harvest is here, and it's bitter because their seeds were. Look at the example of Meghan Markle, targeted, ridiculed, lied on, and yet she carried herself with dignity, kept her distance, and now the truth is unfolding without her even needing to defend herself. That's what happens when someone chosen steps back and lets the storm speak for itself. Silence can be the loudest form of vindication. Chosen one, you're not being punished, you're being promoted. That isolation wasn't rejection, it was redirection. That silence wasn't abandonment, it was preparation. Your separation from the crowd was sacred. You couldn't rise with their noise in your ears. You couldn't ascend while still clinging to people who fed your doubts. And now that you're lighter, clearer, stronger, the shift is undeniable. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14:14. And look at the life of Steve Jobs, betrayed and fired from the very company he built, humiliated. But instead of crumbling, he built something greater, Pixar next, and came back to lead Apple to its greatest era. The people who tried to replace him ended up needing him. That's the beauty of divine reversal. What looked like an ending was actually the stage being set for legacy. So now the question is, will you look back, or will you rise without apology? Everything they tried to deny you is circling back, better, brighter, blessed. Don't water what's already dead. Don't revisit closed doors. Let them sit in the discomfort they designed. Let them taste the silence they used to weaponize against you. He who vindicates me is near. Who then will bring charges against me? Isaiah 50:8. Because this right here is what the other side of survival looks like. You didn't just walk away. You transcended. You alchemized pain into power. You transformed rejection into revelation. And now the scales are balanced and the ugliness they sent is finding its rightful home, not in your life but in theirs. So tell me, chosen one, now that the mirror has turned and their life looks like the storm they tried to bury you in, are you still wondering if it was all in your head? Or can you finally admit that you were right all along? Chosen one, let's be honest, did you really think they'd get away with it forever? They didn't just wish misfortune over your life. They built the trap with their own hands, rigged it with deceit, and watched gleefully from the shadows. But in their arrogance, they stumbled into the very pit they dug for you. Now, the same storm they prayed would tear through your peace is flooding their own foundations, and no lifeboat is coming. You warned them without saying a word, but they thought your silence meant weakness. They mistook your restraint for powerlessness. They didn't know they were playing with fire, and now that fire has set their own world ablaze. They thought it was just drama, but energy is never just energy, it is law. And now the law has spoken. Do not gloat when your enemy falls. When they stumble, do not let your heart rejoice, or the Lord will see and disapprove. Proverbs 24:17-18. Even as their lives unravel, you, yes, even you, feel that sting of compassion, because chosen ones don't wish destruction, even on those who plotted theirs. But let's get something straight. Compassion does not equal a second chance. You're not required to re-enter the very fire God pulled you from. Look around. Doesn't it remind you of what happened to Ellen DeGeneres? Once praised, beloved, celebrated, but behind the scenes, many claim she fostered a toxic environment while projecting kindness publicly, and when the truth began to rise, so did the collapse of that illusion. People saw through the mask. Her fall wasn't random. It was the exposure of energy long sown. And in your life, the same pattern is unfolding. Those who laughed at your tears are now crying behind filters and fake posts. The breakdown is personal because it's karmic. They flexed with money, flaunted peace, curated false images online while mocking your struggle, minimizing your pain. But now, their finances are unstable, their peace is shattering, their mind is loud with voices they can't shut off. Some are literally seeing shadows, hearing whispers in the dark, trying to mask their unraveling with spiritual excuses. But this isn't spiritual warfare. This is spiritual consequence. Let me ask you something, chosen one. Why do you think they came for you so hard? Because your light exposed their lack. You didn't have to try. Just existing, just walking in authenticity, threatened their facade. And when insecure souls see someone who cannot be controlled, they seek to crush them. But what they didn't realize was you weren't alone. You were backed by alignment itself. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Psalm 27:1. They weren't just challenging you. They were challenging the divine structure that supports you. And now that structure is pushing back. Consider what happened to Brian Houston, the former global pastor of Hillsong. Power, popularity, and praise all swept away when the hidden things came to light. What the public didn't see was the energy behind the curtain. It wasn't just scandal, it was sowing and reaping. And that's what's happening now in your life. The seeds they planted in secret are sprouting weeds in their own gardens. You never wished harm on them. You just wanted peace. And now that you're walking in it, your peace is a mirror to their storm. You don't have to lift a finger. The same people who said you were too sensitive, who accused you of being dramatic, are now breaking under the very weight they placed on your shoulders. And here's the irony. Why do they call themselves victims now? Because accountability is too heavy for people who've never carried it. They mocked your isolation, and now they're drowning in theirs. They pointed fingers when you were crying. Now they're surrounded by silence that won't comfort them. There is no peace, says the Lord, for the wicked. Isaiah 48:22. That's not punishment. That's imbalance being corrected. That's divine architecture restoring itself. Take, for example, Shia LaBeouf. His career, once on the rise, faced a storm of allegations, outbursts, and breakdowns. The chaos around him wasn't just random, it mirrored internal battles that were ignored for too long. The same goes for those in your life who once used your suffering as entertainment. Now they are facing a storm of their own, and this time no audience is clapping. They said, "God is with me," while weaponizing lies. They sang praises while plotting your pain, but you knew better. You didn't need to argue. You didn't need to prove anything. You just kept walking, even when the path was covered in thorns, because chosen ones don't break, they burn through. For you, God, tested us, you refined us like silver. Psalm 66:10. So let them play the victim now. Why should you carry their shame? They laughed when you fell, and now they cry when life humbles them. That's not your burden to carry. You were forged in storms. You faced nights that stretched endlessly, voices in your own mind trying to drown your truth. But you made it. And that's what they can't stand, that you're still here, still glowing, still growing, that their fire refined you while your silence is now destroying them. Look at Monica Lewinsky, ridiculed, shamed globally, abandoned by the very system that used her. But she rose, turned pain into advocacy, voice into power. She didn't clap back, she built forward. And now those who once laughed must watch her redefine the narrative they tried to bury her in. And you, chosen one, are doing the same. This isn't just karma, it's justice, it's alignment, it's exposure. You walked through fire and came out pure. They walked through illusions and now live in confusion. Don't check in, don't soften your shine. Don't let guilt confuse your clarity. They're not facing what you faced. They're facing the reflection of what they projected. Let them unravel. Let them speak in circles. Let them drown in storms they invited. You don't owe them rescue. You are not their savior. You were never their punching bag. What they mistook for weakness was the mercy of God covering you. But that season is over. And now they must face themselves without your light to hide behind. Chosen one, have you noticed how silent it's gotten lately? Those voices that once shouted over yours, mocking you, twisting your story, basking in your pain, have faded into whispers. They used to be loud, unshakable, center stage in every room. But now, they're hidden, disconnected. Their once confident smiles replaced with eyes heavy from battles they never prepared for. Their steps, once bold and arrogant, now stumble with desperation. Their aura is fractured, and no costume of crystals, scriptures, or performance spirituality can hold back the collapse. So here's the first question. Why do you think the noise stopped? Because energy never lies. They wore titles like badges, healer, empath, enlightened, chosen. But when the storm came, those masks disintegrated. The storm doesn't recognize image, it recognizes integrity. It doesn't bow to your hashtags or robes or fancy language, it bows only to alignment. And if there is no truth in you, the energy of the universe will expose you faster than any enemy ever could. Woe to you. You clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside you are full of greed and self-indulgence. Matthew 23:25. You, chosen one, you were different. Yes, you were flawed. Yes, you cried, but you were real. That's why the universe never left you, even when everyone else did. Even when it felt like no one saw you, the heavens were documenting your tears. And while they used their wounds to wound others, you used your wounds to heal. That's what sets you apart. Think of Demi Lovato, fame, success, and a public image that looked unstoppable. But behind it was pain, addiction, and spiritual confusion. She wore a mask until the storm forced everything into the light. And only when she dropped the pretense did true healing begin. The same principle applies to those around you who once mocked your journey but are now unraveling. It's not coincidence, it's exposure. They're now collapsing under the pressure you survived. You walked through dark seasons with no help, no blueprint, and no applause, but still came out radiant. Why? Because you had purpose on your back. They carried ego, and when pressure hits, ego shatters, but purpose refines. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. Psalm 34:18. You were crushed but not destroyed, pressed but not broken. And now they're learning the difference. Let me ask you this. Why do you still feel sympathy for people who weaponized your kindness? It's because you're still soft-hearted in a hardened world. But don't let that confuse you. Emotion doesn't mean obligation. You're not required to throw yourself into their storm to prove you still have love in your heart. They drained your compassion. They trampled your boundaries. And now that the energy has flipped, the universe is speaking a truth too loud to ignore. You don't get to wound people and walk away with blessings. Whoever sows injustice will reap calamity. Proverbs 22:8. Consider the story of Martha Stewart, once celebrated, then publicly shamed and imprisoned. She wasn't destroyed because of public image, but because of intention behind her choices. Yet even she had to sit with the consequences before any form of redemption could begin. This is what your enemies are now facing. Not random suffering, but direct cause and effect. Energy multiplied and returned. The silence you're hearing from them, that's the apology, not in words but in collapse. The apology is in their loss of control, their tired eyes, their cracked persona. The stage they built on your pain is now falling apart, plank by plank. And if you're tempted to reach out, to comfort, to save, ask yourself, where were they when you were drowning? Where were their hands when yours were trembling? Where was their concern when your world was falling apart? Are you starting to see the pattern now? They envied your shine but never respected your shadow. They wanted your harvest but never walked through your drought. They copied your walk, your style, your presence, thinking they could recreate destiny like it was a trend. But what they were chasing wasn't your image, it was your essence. And that can't be copied. That has to be earned through pain, persistence, and the private decisions nobody sees. The fire will test what sort of work each has done. 1 Corinthians 3:13. Look at Lady Gaga, ridiculed for her appearance, her choices, her voice. But through pain, rejection, and mental health struggles, she created substance. Now, she's not just known for a look, she's known for resilience. The same applies to you. They wanted the outcome, not the origin, the finished product, not the process. And now the heat they tried to throw at you is consuming them, because they didn't realize how much fire it takes to forge a chosen one. You've been through heartbreaks they didn't see, nights of silence that would have driven them mad. You cried prayers they never heard, stood when no one clapped, and carried dreams that felt too heavy for one soul. But you kept going. And that's the part they didn't understand. That's the part they can't mimic. So now, chosen one, ask yourself, why should you apologize for rising? You earned every inch of this new season, this peace, this clarity, this glow. They didn't envy your pain, they envied your results. But the truth is, the results are just proof of what you endured. So when you see them crumble under the weight of their own intentions, don't mistake it for punishment. It's correction. It's the natural order rebalancing itself. God is not unjust. He will not forget your work and the love you have shown him. Hebrews 6:10. And if you ever feel tempted to check in or play savior, pause, reflect. This is not the time to reverse your healing, to ease their consequences. What they're going through now isn't just hardship. It's a return to sender. Let them wear the silence they handed you. Let them feel the confusion they tried to manufacture in your life. Let them live the chaos they once celebrated. Because you don't owe them anything but truth. And the truth is this: they wanted the glory, but never honored the grind. And now the weight of imitation is crushing them from the inside out. Think of Mike Tyson, once feared, then ridiculed, then broken, but his fall came not from a single moment, but from unchecked energy. Pain turned to rage, ego grown unchecked. His comeback only began when humility entered. That's the same arc your enemies are being forced to walk now. The fall isn't the end, it's the mirror. Chosen one, they only ever saw the glow. They never knew the grave behind it. When they came close to you, it wasn't to uplift or learn. It was to extract, to imitate, to feed off the very fire you were almost consumed by. They didn't witness the nights you wept silently, clawing your way out of emotional pits with no help, no map, no hand to hold. They never saw you rebuild your mind brick by fragile brick. All they saw was your light, and like moths to a flame, they got close, but not to honor it, to harvest it. Why do you think they stayed so close without ever truly connecting? Because your essence intrigued them, your strength convicted them, and your elevation offended every part of their false identity. So instead of being inspired, they became obsessed. Some tried to dress like you, talk like you, even mimic your speech and rhythm, but you knew, deep down, you always knew, what you carried couldn't be copied because it was born from fire. Each one should test their own actions. Then they can take pride in themselves alone, without comparing themselves to someone else. Galatians 6:4. They thought they could steal what you built, that if they stayed around long enough, your power would rub off. But your power isn't perfume. It's not something that transfers through physical closeness. It's not a trend, it's a testimony. Your frequency was tuned in suffering, your wisdom sharpened through loss, your presence forged in seasons of complete internal collapse. And now they're learning what you always knew: nothing divine comes without a price. Think of Tina Turner. Behind the glam, the voice, the success, was pain, a violent marriage, years of manipulation, silence that nearly broke her. But she walked through the fire alone and rose as one of the greatest performers in history. People saw her power, but not the price. Just like those around you, they wanted the crown, but not the crucifixion. They copied your outcome, but bypassed your process. And now they're confused. Nothing is working. Their manifestations are blocked. Their aura is off. Their life feels forced. And it's not because the universe is unfair, it's because the universe is just. A person may think their own ways are right, but the Lord weighs the heart. Proverbs 21:2. They wanted your position without your preparation, but purpose can't be plagiarized. So here's the second question. Why do they keep trying to replicate what nearly destroyed you? Because they don't understand that your breakthrough wasn't aesthetic, it was sacrificial. You didn't just succeed, you surrendered. You didn't just build, you broke first. They look at the version of you that glows and forget the one that groaned in agony. And now that same pressure you endured with grace is pressing them with no warning, and they're crumbling. What looked so easy on you is collapsing on them because you were built for it, and they were just borrowing it. Look at Simone Biles. The world saw her medals, her flips, her dominance, but beneath it all was a mental toll few could fathom. When she finally stepped back to protect her spirit, people who envied her success criticized her rest. Why? Because they wanted her level of excellence but ignored her level of sacrifice. The same applies to you. They wanted the crown but never considered the weight. Now, their envy has turned into exhaustion, their obsession into breakdown. They're trying to maintain a life they were never designed to carry. And you're watching quietly, calmly, from the high place you climbed with blood in your shoes and truth in your soul. So ask yourself, chosen one, why do you still feel the need to explain your journey to people who mocked your process? You don't owe them context, you owe yourself peace. Their crash isn't punishment, it's revelation. It's the universe making sure they finally understand that glory without grounding is a setup for destruction. You didn't survive for show. You didn't heal for attention. You became, through pain, through surrender, through divine alignment. Though you have made me see troubles, many and bitter, you will restore my life again. Psalm 71 verse 20. Restoration is yours. Revelation is theirs. Consider Brendan Fraser, once adored by Hollywood, then abandoned and blacklisted. Quietly, he endured pain, trauma, and isolation. Years later, he returned, not because of a PR stunt, but because the truth of who he was couldn't be hidden forever. That's what's happening now. Truth is rising, imitation is fading, and the difference is becoming undeniable. They admired the fruit, but despised the seed. They applauded the results, but mocked the planting season. But now, every flower you fought to grow is blooming, while every shortcut they took is turning into withered roots. They're not just experiencing loss, they're experiencing awakening, a harsh one. And here's the fourth question. What happens when the people who tried to imitate your light must now live in the shadow of their own deception? They're learning that spiritual inheritance can't be stolen, that calling can't be replicated, that crowns aren't found, they're forged. No one can receive anything unless it has been given from heaven. John 3:27. You were given this life because you were called to walk it, carry it, and rise through it. Now, they're crawling through the fire they lit for you, hoping to survive a journey they never respected. And the irony? You no longer need revenge, validation, or even words. Your elevation is your response. Your healing is your answer. Your peace is your justice. Think of Bethany Hamilton, the pro surfer who lost her arm to a shark attack. She returned to the waves, not because it was easy, but because it was hers. Her journey couldn't be copied. Her strength couldn't be bought. And now she inspires millions. Because legacy isn't built on imitation, it's built on survival. So the next time someone tries to copy your crown without carrying your cross, just smile. They don't know what you went through to shine this way, and they're about to learn that imitation is flattering until the fire starts. Chosen one, they thought they could wear your crown, until the weight of your wounds began to crush them. They wanted the glory, but didn't count the cost. They tried to replicate your elevation, not knowing the price you paid to stand this tall. Your crown wasn't placed on your head. It was forged in battle, shaped by every scar, every sleepless night, every betrayal you had to forgive in silence. What they saw as glamour was built on grief. What they assumed was easy was constructed through endurance. And now they're suffocating under pressure that was never meant for them. Here's the truth. Can imitation ever carry authenticity's burden? Number. Because not everyone is built to carry your calling. Not everyone can survive your storms, and the ones who tried to walk your path, hijack your energy, and assume your identity are now discovering this the hard way. The Lord gives strength to his people. The Lord blesses his people with peace. Psalm 29:11. You have peace now, not because it was handed to you, but because you fought every inch for it. Think of Whitney Houston, an unmatched voice, a soul that touched the heavens. But behind her beauty and talent was unimaginable pressure, trauma, and spiritual warfare. The world saw the performance. Few survived what she endured. That's what your enemies misunderstood. They saw your strength as aesthetic, not sacred. But now the same spiritual battles you walked through silently are manifesting loudly in their lives. And they are unraveling. They didn't realize your rise wasn't a glow-up. It was a resurrection. You didn't evolve by accident. You bled into your breakthrough. They laughed while you were buried in silence. And now, as their lives crack under self-inflicted storms, they're realizing imitation is cute until the fire starts. So ask yourself, why do they crumble where you were carved? Because your trials were tailor-made. Your pain had your name on it. What crushed others built you. What silenced many gave you voice. And now the weight that once tried to destroy you is the very foundation you stand on. Though I walk in the midst of trouble, you preserve my life. You stretch out your hand against the anger of my foes. Psalm 138:7. That preservation didn't come through convenience. It came through obedience, suffering, and alignment. They're spiraling, acting unbothered online but privately falling apart. They're trying to walk in your light, not realizing that every step you took was purchased with pain. The demons they called down on your name are now circling them, and they don't recognize them as the rightful target. And spiritual misfires like that, they don't disappear. They return to sender, and they come back multiplied. Look at the rise and fall of Elizabeth Holmes. She dressed the part, used the language, mimicked the greats, but she lacked the foundation. Theranos looked revolutionary until the pressure of falsehoods exposed every crack. Her crown wasn't real. It was constructed from illusion. And just like that, it all crumbled. Your enemies did the same. They saw your strength and tried to wear it like a jacket. But you can't wear what you haven't walked through. Now they're facing storms they summoned on you. Storms they once prayed would swallow, you are now drowning them. They're stuck in spiritual cycles without maps, without guidance, without the resilience that carried you through. And the hard truth? Not everyone escapes what they create. Some storms are built for purification, others for exposure. And what's hitting them now? It's not punishment, it's precision. And what about you, chosen one? Do you feel guilt for their downfall? You shouldn't. You didn't curse them. You didn't clap back. You simply walked away. And that act alone released the full weight of what was circling back. Let them sit in the energy they created. Let them feel what they sent your way. You were the lesson they refused to learn. Now life is teaching them with no translator. Think of Robert Downey Jr., once written off, buried in addiction, mocked in the media. But his fall wasn't final. It was transformational. He did the work, took the path that required surrender, and returned stronger. That's what separates the chosen from the imitators. You submitted to your growth. They tried to skip the steps. They thought your journey was glamorous, never knowing it was gruesome. They wanted your glow, but not your groaning. And now they're cracking, panicking, watching their carefully crafted masks slip while you rest in peace that can't be copied. So let's get real. Did they ever want to become you, or did they just want your results? They didn't want your character. They didn't want your sacrifices. They wanted your strength on clearance. But you, chosen one, paid full price. You walked alone. You cried in silence. You kept showing up when quitting felt easier. And now you're crowned, not because you survived, but because you transcended. The one who stands firm to the end will be saved. Matthew 24:13. They're crawling through a fire they lit for you, still wondering why they can't breathe. The answer is simple. Your path wasn't designed for them. Your fire was meant to refine, not destroy. But when they stepped onto sacred ground without preparation, the fire turned on them. Chosen one, let me speak straight to the core of who you are. Stop doubting your light. Stop questioning why you're still standing while others who tried to destroy you are falling apart. You didn't survive by chance. You were preserved on purpose. You weren't too intense, too emotional, too passionate. You were divinely designed that way. They couldn't handle your depth, not because you were too much, but because they were never equipped to meet you at that level. Their insecurity met your authenticity and called it a threat. And let me ask you, why would God give you such a heavy purpose if you weren't built to carry it? You were never handed an easy path. You were given a divine assignment, a mission that would require strength forged through heartbreak, betrayal, and soul-level transformation. We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair. 2 Corinthians 4:8. You're still standing because you were built with eternal reinforcement, and now that you've outgrown your pain, your power is shaking every false foundation around you, and it's exposing every lie built on your name. Don't waste a drop of your precious energy feeling guilty for their collapse. You didn't send the storm. You survived it. The tempest they're drowning in now, it was tailored by the same intentions they once sent in your direction. The difference is, your soul was anchored. Theirs was driven by ego. Look at Princess Diana. She was called unstable, emotional, a liability, while all she ever did was love with her whole heart in a system that thrived on control. The world mocked her tears while secretly admiring her strength, and when she broke away, her glow threatened their empire. You've been through something similar. They called you crazy while they gaslit your reality, mocked your love while feeding off your loyalty. But who's obsessed now? The same ones who once dismissed you are now orbiting your energy, watching every move like their life depends on it. Why do you think they're still watching if they claimed you meant nothing? Because people lie, but energy doesn't. You loved fully. You showed up with honesty. You responded to manipulation with confusion, not malice, and they twisted your genuine reactions into ammunition. You weren't overreacting. You were responding to a covert war waged on your sanity. These people didn't explode. They eroded. They whispered criticisms dressed up as concern. They pulled you in, only to push you away, just to watch you chase them. That was never love. That was control disguised as chemistry. They provoked your spirit, broke your boundaries, then called you unstable when your soul cried out. They sharpen their tongues like swords and aim cruel words like deadly arrows. Psalm 64:3. And worst of all, they curated an audience, a cast of flying monkeys who didn't just believe the lies, they co-signed them. Think of Britney Spears, gaslit by her industry, manipulated by those who claimed to love her, and painted as unstable while they controlled her every move. Her breakdown wasn't weakness, it was a scream for freedom. And once the truth came out, the world had to face what they participated in. Just like you, chosen one, they labeled you before understanding you, and now the mask is slipping. Let's talk about the enablers, the fake friends, the mutuals who chose gossip over truth, those who clapped when you were insulted, who rolled their eyes at your name but quietly copied your every move. These weren't just misled people. They were insecure souls clinging to narratives that made them feel safer in their smallness. A perverse person stirs up conflict, and a gossip separates close friends. Proverbs 16:28. You tried to keep peace, tried to hold love in shaking hands, tried to reason with people who only saw you as a story to twist. And now they're scrambling, watching you glow in silence, stalking your socials, asking around, pretending to be unbothered, but obsessively checking if you've truly moved on. So here's the real question. If you were truly the problem, why can't they let you go? Because it was never about closure. It was always about control. You were their energetic supply, their emotional mirror, their healing wrapped in human form, and they took it for granted. Now that you've healed, reclaimed your power, and gone quiet, they're starving. You're no longer chasing, you're no longer playing their game, and that silence, it's echoing louder than any argument ever could. Look at Meghan Markle. She was accused of dividing a royal family when all she did was speak her truth and protect her peace. People labeled her dramatic, manipulative, even though they had no access to her reality. And now, those same critics dissect her every move, proving that the obsession never ends. It just hides behind passive aggression. They once bragged, "I've got them wrapped around my finger." And maybe for a moment, you were caught in their web. Not because you were foolish, but because you believed love meant showing up, even when it hurt. You stayed longer than you should have, not out of weakness, but because you loved deeply. And now that you've pulled away, they're unraveling. The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. Psalm 118, verse 22. You are that cornerstone now, built from rejection, steady through storms, rising while they fall. They made you the villain in a script they wrote, directed every scene so they could cry victim when you finally broke under pressure. But what they never expected was your evolution. that you'd rise, not just stronger but wiser, that you'd heal, not just survive. And worst of all, for them, you did it without seeking revenge. And now, chosen one, will you dim your light to make your enemies comfortable again? Absolutely not. You're not cold. You're clear. You're not bitter. You're better. You're not angry. You're aligned. Let them gossip. Let them obsess. Let them silently stalk your growth. You are no longer available for roles in their emotional theater. You've left the stage and taken the spotlight with you. And every time they check in, every time they spy from the shadows, every time they hear your name and feel that sting, it's not you haunting them. It's their own guilt, their own exposure, their own unresolved karma showing up to complete the cycle. Chosen one, has a song ever felt like a prophecy meant just for you? Maybe you've heard it. Obsessed by Mariah Carey. It plays and your spirit immediately knows. It's not just a melody, it's a message. That energy you feel, it's not imagined. That weight on your shoulders, that nudge in your spirit, that echo in your chest, it's them. Yes, them. Their focus is locked on you so intensely, it's practically screaming. They thought you'd always orbit their world, that you'd always crawl back, begging for the bare minimum, while they handed you emotional breadcrumbs. But now that you've cut the cord, they're gasping for the air that only your presence gave them. So let me ask you, why do you still question your power when their obsession proves it? You were never the one obsessed. You were just loyal. You believed in the good. You fought for something real. But your detachment, your silence, is their karma. They don't need to say, "I miss you," out loud. Their energy says it every time they stalk your profile. Their regret drips off every unanswered message. Because when you left, you didn't just walk away. You disrupted their entire ecosystem of manipulation. But the Lord is faithful, and He will strengthen you and protect you from the evil one. 2 Thessalonians 3:3. Now they're the ones replaying every moment, obsessing over the control they lost, drowning in a silence they can't interpret. You're not explaining yourself. That was the real blow. You're not chasing after they provoked you. That was their collapse. Your peace is loud. Your absence is devastating. And the game they once controlled is glitching without its main player, you. Take Amber Heard and Johnny Depp. For years, narratives were twisted. Public perception was shaped by half-truths and performance. But when everything finally unraveled, the court of truth exposed the manipulation, and the public re-evaluated everything they were told. You've lived this on a personal level. They made you the villain. But now their carefully scripted story is collapsing. And guess who's watching? The same crowd that once doubted you. Because even the flying monkeys, the enablers, the side characters in their false reality, are starting to notice. They're catching the inconsistencies. They're rethinking the narratives. They're remembering the times they stayed silent when they should have spoken up. And slowly, their eyes are opening to what you endured behind closed doors. Let me ask you, should you feel guilty for surviving something others helped create? Absolutely not. You weren't unstable. You were in survival mode. Your reactions weren't excessive. They were the result of calculated harm, gaslighting, manipulation, emotional bait and switch. And now that you've stepped off their stage and taken your power back, they're left with nothing but a collapsing audience and an empty performance. This is what happens when people choose comfort over conscience, when they side with charm over character. Do not judge by appearances, but judge with right judgment. John 7:24. But many didn't. They saw your tears and called it drama. They heard your voice crack and called it chaos. They ignored every red flag because it was easier to believe the story than to confront the storyteller. Think of Monica Lewinsky again. Once the punchline to every late-night joke, branded with shame, dismissed as unstable. But the truth, the full truth, came out years later, and public perception changed. Because hindsight has a way of exposing what loyalty once covered. You too were once covered in rumors, lies, and whispers. But now your silence is louder than their campaign, and it's becoming painfully obvious that the real story was never the one they told. You didn't lose, you escaped, you didn't get exposed. They revealed themselves through how they treated you, and now they're haunted not by you, but by the realization that the light they tried to dim is glowing beyond their reach. So here's the question. What happens when the people who cheered for your collapse begin to collapse themselves? Now they're getting front row seats to the same storm they helped conjure. They signed up for the lies. They passed judgment without discernment. And now the very energy they helped circulate is knocking on their door. The law of return is in full effect. The trouble they cause recoils on them. Their violence comes down on their own heads. Psalm 7:16. This isn't revenge, this is reckoning. Look at Chris Brown, an example of someone whose public downfall came not just from one action, but from the ripple effect of unresolved inner storms. His image suffered because what was hidden eventually surfaced. That's happening now with your accusers. Their cracks are showing. The mask is slipping. And the more they pretend, the more obvious it becomes. Some of them are still playing pretend. I'm fine, it's just a rough patch. But energy doesn't lie. You can feel the fragility in their words. You see the desperation in their posts. They mocked your glow-up, and now they can't sleep without knowing whether you've truly moved on. They used to laugh about you. Now they panic in silence. So let's be real. Who's obsessed now? Every story they spun is unraveling. Every person they used to rally against you is now questioning their own judgment. You don't need to prove anything. Your growth speaks for itself. Your glow is your vindication. No one lights a lamp and hides it in a clay jar or puts it under a bed. Instead, they put it on a stand so that those who come in can see the light. Luke 8:16. And your light, chosen one, is now blinding the very people who once tried to live in your darkness. They backed the villain, and now the villain is drowning and dragging them down with them. The lies are folding, the fake personas are breaking, and the karma they helped circulate is returning home. Addressed to sender, no forwarding. Chosen one, let's make something clear. It was never really about you. It was about what your light revealed in them. You didn't betray them, you didn't hurt them, you didn't even wrong them. You just showed up with clarity, peace, and authenticity, and that terrified them. Why? Because your presence made their inner chaos louder. You became a mirror to everything they had buried, avoided, or refused to confront. And instead of doing the courageous work of looking inward, they took the easier path. Attack the mirror. You became the scapegoat for their unhealed wounds. They repay me evil for good and hatred for my friendship. Psalm 109 verse 5. So they joined the smear campaign. They co-signed the villain. They picked a side, not based on truth but on emotion, not based on discernment but on dysfunction. They clapped when you were dragged. They nodded while lies about you spread. Why? Because it gave them a purpose, something to feel aligned with, something to talk about, something to project onto. The deeper reason? Your growth reminded them of their stagnancy, and that made them uncomfortable. Have you ever wondered, why did some people turn on you so quickly, so easily, with so little truth? Because logic had nothing to do with it. It was envy, it was projection, it was fear of facing their own shadows. It was easier to believe you were unstable than to admit they lacked the courage to call out what was clearly wrong. You were just being, and that was enough to threaten everything fake in them. Look at the story of Amanda Knox, falsely accused, globally shamed and dragged through the court of public opinion. Most people didn't care about the facts. They just wanted a villain. And the longer it went on, the more people defended the narrative, even after the truth surfaced. Just like in your life, many didn't really know the story. They just needed a reason to judge, a bandwagon to hop on. But now, the energy is turning, because here's the part they never expected. Karma doesn't just knock on the door of the main offender. It makes house calls to everyone who helped build the lie, whether they held the knife, handed it over, or clapped when it was used. The energy knows. Whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but whoever takes crooked paths will be found out. Proverbs 10:9. Now they're confused, lost, angry. Their lives are glitching, jobs lost, relationships breaking, inner peace gone. Their spirit is heavy, the flow is blocked, and they don't know why. But you do, because when you co-sign harm, you inherit the spiritual debt. When you join the chaos, you join the collapse. Let me ask you this. How many of them defended behavior they never would have tolerated if it had happened to them? Exactly. They excused what they didn't experience firsthand. My best friend would never lie. He's not like that. You're just sensitive. But had the same thing been done to them, they'd be on fire with rage. The difference? They chose to believe comfort over conscience, loyalty to dysfunction over alignment with truth. Consider Janet Jackson after the 2004 Super Bowl incident. While Justin Timberlake moved on relatively unscathed, Janet was blacklisted, ridiculed, and abandoned, even by people in her own industry. Years later, many of those who remained silent now admit they were wrong. That's the moment many in your life are having now, realizing they backed the wrong narrative, and the cost is catching up, because now they're reaping what they helped sow. The narcissist they defended, gone, moved on, discarded them the same way they enabled your destruction, and suddenly the truth they denied is knocking on their door with receipts. They're not just uncomfortable, they're being exposed, and no one's coming to save them. Do you see what's happening? What they cheered for is now on their plate, and they have no appetite for it. Some of them are waking up in storms they helped conjure, standing in fallouts they clapped for, living in the same confusion they once mocked you for. And here's the twist. They don't have your strength. They don't have your clarity. They don't have your alignment. Be not deceived. God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. Galatians 6:7. And what they sowed was betrayal. What they're reaping is exposure. Look at Taylor Swift's Reputation era. She was painted as the problem, turned into a villain by public consensus, mocked for being too emotional. But she used that season to regroup, evolve, and emerge more powerful than ever. Meanwhile, many who helped shape the smear campaign faded out. That's you, chosen one. You're in your Reputation era, rising while the lies fold under truth. Now they're realizing loyalty to manipulation is not noble, it's dangerous. Being neutral in the face of abuse is complicity, and they weren't neutral. They laughed, they posted, they screenshotted, they whispered, they enjoyed the drama. But now, the drama has moved into their own life, and the curtain won't close. Chosen one, do they get it now? Yes, in their own quiet, shame-filled way. They feel what you felt, but without your foundation, without your God, without your resilience. And that's why it's crushing them. You went through it and grew. They're going through it and breaking. The energy they helped weaponize is now weaponized against them. And don't expect help from the one they defended. The narcissist always discards when done. Now they're left isolated, exposed, and used. What they thought was loyalty was just manipulation. What they thought was power was proximity. And now that proximity is gone, and so is their relevance. This is the fallout. This is what happens when people choose applause over accountability. When they laugh at pain they never had to feel. And the universe is fair. It doesn't forget who clapped. Chosen one, let's tell the truth. They hoped would never surface. When they couldn't handle your power, they fabricated your flaws. You didn't hurt them. You didn't betray them. You didn't even respond with the same venom they gave you. All you did was exist, authentically, powerfully, unapologetically, and that alone shattered their illusion of control. They didn't find real flaws in you, so they created fiction. They twisted your words, exaggerated your reactions, and painted a version of you that only made sense in the script of their own insecurity. They hated me without cause. John 15:25. But let's ask a hard question. What kind of person builds a false identity around another person's pain? One who fears accountability more than anything else. They didn't want healing, they wanted attention. And when you refused to play the part they cast for you, they turned the crowd against you. Suddenly the villain cried out, "They hurt me!" And people cheered, because finally they had a reason to hate someone they were already jealous of. The lies felt comfortable. The fiction gave them identity. But now, the narrative is unraveling and the truth is echoing louder than ever. Look at Johnny Depp, once painted as the abuser in a story the world was quick to believe. But when the dust settled and the facts emerged, it was clear the story had been twisted. Reputations don't get destroyed by truth, they get refined by it. Yours has undergone the same transformation, and those who once believed the lies, they're starting to look around, embarrassed by what they co-signed. So ask yourself, why do they look so uncomfortable now when your name comes up? Because deep down, they know. They know the person they rallied against wasn't the problem. They know the one they protected was never the victim, and that knowledge burns, especially when it can no longer be denied. A false witness will not go unpunished, and whoever pours out lies will perish. Proverbs 19:9. The karma is arriving, and it's not just touching the originators, it's consuming the entire ecosystem of enablers. You never retaliated. You didn't scream, didn't rage, didn't perform. You moved in silence. And that silence, it was deafening. That stillness, it was strategic. You didn't need to prove yourself. You just needed to keep walking. Because when lies are loud, truth doesn't need a megaphone, it just needs time. Look at Brendan Fraser, blacklisted, mocked and dismissed by an industry he once carried. His voice was nearly erased. But when the truth came forward, the world had no choice but to acknowledge what it had ignored for years. The same thing is happening now. Your light is outlasting the lies. And the spotlight they used to expose you, it's now shining on their own shadows. You didn't need to be perfect. You only needed to be obedient. Obedient to your growth. Obedient to your silence. Obedient to your calling. Because grace under pressure isn't weakness, it's divine discipline. You let the universe do what it always does. Correct in silence, restore in public. For the Lord is a God of justice. Blessed are all who wait for him. Isaiah 30:18. They turned your boundaries into bitterness, labeled your healing as hostility, called your stillness cold, but you knew better. You weren't shutting down. You were rising. You were no longer available for war in places where peace was the real threat. And now they're left holding the wreckage of a story that has collapsed in their hands. Let's ask something that cuts to the soul. If they were right about you, why are you the one thriving now? Why are you glowing while they're glitching? Why is your peace magnetic while their confusion is chronic? Because truth doesn't panic. Alignment doesn't need validation, and divine protection doesn't require applause. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Psalm 23:5. That table has been set, and they're watching you eat in silence, choking on the lies they once served. Look at Janet Jackson again, a legacy threatened by one moment, one narrative, one misjudgment. But while others tried to erase her, she built quietly. Decades later, the truth stood tall, and those who mocked her now sit in regret. That's the power of quiet grace. That's your power too. You never played in the mud. You never stooped to their level. You didn't run around defending your name. You let your life do that. And now, your existence alone is their biggest reminder of failure. Not because you sought revenge, but because you chose peace over performance. You let them scream. You let them twist. You let them rally. And while they screamed, you evolved. So here's the last question. Can they ever truly recover from the realization that they misjudged you completely? Maybe. Maybe not. But that's not your concern, because this isn't about revenge. It's about revelation. They thought you would break. Instead, you became. They called you unstable, but you stood. They tried to erase you. But now, your name carries more weight than their entire campaign. You never needed to be seen. You just needed to be true. And now your quiet power is louder than their loud lies. While they gossip, you glow. While they plot, you prosper. While they try to rewrite history, the future is writing you into legacy. Think of Tyra Banks, ridiculed, questioned, often mocked for her intensity. But through all the noise, she built empires, shifted culture, and turned criticism into capital. That's what chosen ones do. They don't shout. They show up, and they win. Quietly, completely, undeniably. Let them sit in what they created. Let the shame teach what truth couldn't reach. And let this be the final reminder. Real power doesn't retaliate. It resonates. Chosen one, this is where the page turns. But your story is still rising. They thought silence meant defeat, that your boundaries were bitterness, that your grace was gullibility. But what they failed to realize is, you weren't shrinking, you were sharpening. You weren't fighting for attention. You were walking in alignment. You weren't interested in winning the battle. You were chosen to finish the mission. Now, the very ones who mocked your restraint are being humbled by your rise. The energy they misused is correcting their steps. The lessons they could have learned through humility, they are now learning through loss. Because when someone touches what's divinely protected, the fallout isn't personal, it's spiritual. You didn't have to prove anything. You didn't have to clap back. You didn't have to convince anyone to see your worth. Your stillness was louder than their noise. Your peace was more powerful than their chaos. And now, the truth is shining through every lie they told. The ones who were once quick to judge you are now watching your elevation in quiet awe. To each one of you who stayed with this message until the end, thank you. Your time, your presence, your spirit here, it means everything. You are not alone in this battle. You are part of a chosen remnant rising in silent strength. If this message resonated with you, if it confirmed what your spirit already knew, I invite you to support this mission by using the Super Thanks button below. It's never an obligation, only an opportunity. Whether you give or not, your presence is deeply valued. Your energy, your listening heart, and your willingness to receive this truth, that's what matters most. When you pour into messages like this, you're not just donating, you're helping truth reach someone else who needs it desperately. You're helping this light shine into places that have been dark for too long. And as we close this chapter, I want to bless you with these final words. May everything that tried to break you become the reason you rise higher. May every false word spoken against you fall to the ground powerless. May your enemies become your footstool and your legacy be built not on revenge, but on redemption. May your name be spoken in rooms your haters swore you'd never enter. May your life be the proof that divine protection is real, that grace wins, and that truth always outlives the lie. Chosen one, keep going, keep glowing, keep walking like the fire never touched you, because it didn't consume you, it crowned you. And to every eye that reads this, and every heart that receives it, I see you, I honor you, and I bless you. Keep walking in your light. The storm wasn't your ending, it was your evidence.